I stood frozen near the back of the room, my fingers tightening around the edge of my wine glass so hard I thought it might shatter. There she was, my sister, Sienna, gliding across the floor of the downtown engagement dinner her boyfriend had planned, wearing my wedding dress. Not a similar one, not a knockoff. The exact same custom-designed gown I had poured 3 years of savings into. Ivory silk, hand-stitched lace sleeves, and the delicate pearl buttons that trailed down the back. I recognized the little blue thread stitched into the hem, my something blue. She hadn't even bothered to hide it. She smiled wide as the crowd turned toward her, their clapping growing louder. "She looks stunning," someone whispered behind me. "That dress is to die for." And then came the laughter. Not mocking, not cruel, just thoughtless. People chuckling at how beautiful she looked, how lucky her fiancé was. No one knew the truth. To them, I was just another guest, just her older sister standing there like some extra, watching it unfold like a nightmare in slow motion. Sienna saw me. I know she did. Our eyes met across the room for just a second, and instead of guilt, she gave me this soft little shrug like oops, like she couldn't understand why I might be upset. I didn't cry. Not yet. I didn't scream, even though my chest felt like it was about to cave in. I just stood there, my heart pounding so loud I couldn't hear the music anymore. I kept telling myself I must be wrong, that it couldn't really be my dress. But every stitch, every seam, every detail, I knew it too well. The betrayal hit me in a wave. It wasn't just about the fabric or the money. It was everything that dress represented. The hours I spent designing it with my tailor, the dreams I'd attached to it, the memories of my grandmother's brooch, now pinned over Sienna's heart like it had always belonged to her. And the worst part? No one around me seemed to notice anything was wrong. I tried to steady my breathing, but my stomach turned every time I caught another glimpse of her. I imagined the moment I'd originally dreamed of, walking down the aisle in that dress, my fiancé Miles looking at me with awe, my mother tearing up. That dream had just been stolen, paraded, and applauded, all before I even had the chance to live it. I took one step back, then another. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be there. Not like this. Not watching everyone celebrate while my chest burned with betrayal. But something inside me stopped me from leaving. Maybe it was the fury that bubbled under the hurt. Maybe it was the weight of everything I'd ever done for her. Or maybe it was the quiet voice in my head saying, "Don't you dare let her erase you like this." Because in that moment, I realized something that made my heart shift. This wasn't the end of my story. She thought she had won, that she'd humiliated me, but she had no idea what was coming. I stayed. I found my seat, straightened my spine, and waited. Not for revenge, for something better, a moment of clarity, a chance to speak when the time was right. Because if Sienna wanted to play games in public, I would finish them in public. This wasn't just about a dress anymore. It was about everything. To really understand why what Sienna did cut so deep, you have to know where we came from. My name is Alara James. I'm 27 now, but for most of my life, I was more of a third parent than a big sister. When I was just 13, our dad walked out. No long goodbye, no explanation, just a voicemail on the home phone saying he needed space and never came back. My mom, Grace, tried to hold it together, but the truth is she fell apart, slowly, quietly. She started sleeping all day, forgetting bills, missing work. Some days she didn't speak at all, and that left me. I was the one who packed Sienna's lunch, braided her hair before school, helped with her homework, and made sure the lights stayed on. I remember standing in line at the grocery store with a handful of coupons, praying I did the math right. Sienna was 7, sweet and wide-eyed, always clinging to my hand and asking, "Will Daddy come back today?" I'd smile and say maybe. I never told her I didn't believe it anymore. I gave up a lot for our family. I turned down a full scholarship to a college out of state because I didn't want to leave Sienna and Mom alone. Instead, I went to community college and worked part-time at a diner. Eventually, I picked up full-time shifts to help with rent. Every paycheck went to bills, groceries, school supplies, and whatever else Sienna needed. And I never once resented her for it. She was my sister, my responsibility, my girl. As we got older, things changed. Sienna grew into one of those girls people couldn't help but notice. Beautiful, effortlessly charming, and wildly ambitious. She had big dreams, becoming a fashion designer, moving to LA, launching her own brand. I cheered her on through all of it. When she got accepted into a fashion program in New York, she cried in my arms, overwhelmed with joy. She didn't know I'd taken on a second job to help pay her deposit. I wanted her to have everything I didn't, even when she started acting different, distant, a little self-absorbed. She stopped asking how I was doing, stopped coming home for holidays unless it was convenient. I brushed it off. I told myself she was just busy, that this was what success looked like: messy, fast, self-focused. I reminded myself that I wasn't her mother. I didn't need to control her, but I did expect her to love me back, to see me, even just a little. When I met Miles, something shifted. He wasn't flashy or rich, but he was steady, kind, the kind of man who listened when I spoke and looked me in the eye like I was the most important person in the room. I told Sienna about him, and she teased me for falling for someone so safe. But I didn't care. After years of holding everyone else together, Miles made me feel held. When we got engaged, I cried in my car for 20 minutes. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I finally felt like life was giving me something back. I didn't have much money left after helping Sienna for so long, but I splurged on one thing: my wedding dress. Not a store-bought one. I wanted it designed. Every detail had meaning. The silk was sourced from my grandmother's hometown. The lace was stitched by hand. The back was low-cut, just like the dress my mom wore when she married Dad. And the brooch? It was my grandmother's, her last gift to me before she passed. Sienna was the first person I showed it to. She said, "Wow, this is stunning." Then she hugged me, told me she was proud. She asked questions about every detail, complimented the fit, ran her fingers along the lace. I thought we were having a moment. Like maybe we were reconnecting. Like maybe my little sister was finally seeing me. Not as a background character, not as the responsible one, but as me, a bride, a woman with dreams of her own. Looking back now, I see it differently. She wasn't admiring it. She was studying it. Being the responsible one in the family doesn't come with applause. No one gives you a medal for doing the laundry when you're 14 or making dinner every night because mom's too tired to get out of bed. You just do it because someone has to. Because if you don't, no one will. That was my role in the James family. The fixer, the strong one, the emotional sponge. I wasn't the prettiest or the most charming. That was always Sienna. She was the girl who could cry for something she wanted and someone would hand it to her. Even when we were kids, if we both wanted something, say the last cupcake or the front seat, Sienna got it every time. And I let her, because I believed she needed more. She'd lost Dad when she was too young to understand. She needed extra comfort, extra support, and I was willing to give it. But what I didn't realize back then was that always giving can make people forget you have needs too. Sienna was the hurricane. I was the shelter, and no one stops to thank the shelter. Even as adults, that dynamic never changed. Family dinners turned into showcases of Sienna's success. Sienna just got featured in a fashion blog. Sienna landed a celebrity client. Every phone call from Mom began with, "Did you hear what your sister's doing?" And if I mentioned anything about my own life, my job in HR, my small apartment, the project I led at work, it was always met with polite nods or redirected to something more exciting Sienna had going on. It was like I lived in her shadow even when I was standing in full light. The one moment I truly thought things might shift was when I got engaged to Miles. We weren't flashy, but we were happy. We'd spent years building something solid. We weren't racing to show it off. We just knew. When he proposed at our favorite trail by the lake, I said yes without hesitation. It was the kind of peace I had never known growing up, the kind that made you feel safe in your own skin. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment my family saw me, but instead of excitement, I got lukewarm politeness. My mom's first question wasn't, "How did he propose?" or "Can I see the ring?" It was, "When are you thinking of doing it?" Like it was a chore to be scheduled. And Sienna? She barely blinked. She said, "That's cute," then pivoted to a story about how her boyfriend had just taken her to a rooftop bar in Manhattan. She didn't ask a single thing about my plans. She didn't even ask to meet Miles until weeks later, and only because our mom pressured her. The worst part? I let it slide. I told myself she was busy, that she didn't mean to be cold. I kept trying to earn her affection, even when she gave me nothing back. That's what years of being overlooked does to you. It makes you think you need to try harder, not that others need to try at all. I remember one night sitting with Miles after another family gathering where Sienna had dominated the conversation. I tried to share a story from my week and no one even looked up from their phones. "I feel invisible," I whispered to him. He took my hand and said, "You're not invisible. You're just too steady for people to notice." It was meant to be comforting, but it hit like a stone. Because he was right. I was the steady one, the safe one, the one people expected to always show up, never complain, and clap for everyone else's spotlight. No one ever expected me to want the spotlight myself. And when I told them I was designing my own wedding dress, they smirked like it was cute. Like, "Oh look, Alara's trying something bold," but they didn't take me seriously. That dress was the first thing I'd done just for me. It was mine, my joy, my creativity, my expression. And Sienna took it like she was entitled to it, because that's how they all saw me. Not as someone with boundaries or dreams or value, but as a resource. Until that night at the engagement dinner, when I realized something. If I wanted to be seen, truly seen, I couldn't wait for permission. I would have to take the mic myself. A few months before my wedding, things between me and Sienna seemed oddly better. Not perfect, but better. She started texting more often. Random messages like, "Have you picked out colors yet?" or "I saw this hairstyle that would look amazing on you." I was suspicious at first. After all, we weren't exactly close. But I was also exhausted. Emotionally, mentally. I wanted to believe the best in her. I wanted to believe she was finally trying. She even offered to help with wedding planning. She said she knew how stressful it could be, especially with Miles working long hours and me balancing work with everything else. "Let me be your maid of honor," she said over brunch one Sunday, flashing that disarming smile she always used when she wanted something. It felt like a breakthrough. For once, it seemed like maybe she saw me, not as the big sister who always had it together, but as a woman, a bride, someone who needed support. So I let her in. She came with me to dress fittings. She offered feedback. I remember standing on the platform in the boutique, watching my reflection in the mirror and Sienna circling me slowly with her head tilted, eyes full of wonder. "This is actually perfect," she said softly. "It's so you." My heart swelled. I smiled like a fool. That one comment felt like sunlight after years of clouds. I told myself, maybe she's growing up. Maybe we're finally healing. I even shared the sentimental pieces with her. The story behind Grandma's brooch, the blue threads sewn into the hem, the hidden message embroidered on the inside of the bodice. Worth the wait. She got quiet when I showed her that part. Then she hugged me. "I'm really proud of you," she said, and I believed her. That was the worst part, the belief. Looking back now, I can't figure out if it was genuine in the moment or if it was part of the performance. Because for weeks after that, we actually had fun together. We picked flower arrangements. We tasted cake samples. She even came to my bridal shower and gave me a heartfelt speech about how I'd always been the strong one and how much she looked up to me. I cried. I actually cried. I let my guard down. Completely. And then came her surprise. Out of nowhere, she announced her boyfriend Noah had proposed. Or, as she said it, he finally stopped being scared and put a ring on it. She giggled, flashing a modest diamond that looked suspiciously recent. Everyone was shocked, especially Mom, who had assumed they weren't even serious. But I smiled. I clapped. I hugged her, because if I had to be second to Sienna one more time, I was going to do it gracefully. Then she said something that made my stomach flip. "We're not doing anything big," she said, glancing at me. "Just a small dinner. Casual. Next week. Nothing fancy." It felt abrupt, rushed, but I didn't question it. Why would I? She'd been so kind, so helpful, so present. I told myself not to be paranoid. I even offered to help her with her dress. And she laughed and said, "Oh, don't worry, I have something in mind." The week of her engagement dinner, she grew distant again. Said she was swamped. Said Noah's parents were arriving early and needed help settling in. It made sense. Sort of. I still didn't see it coming. Even the night of the dinner, I was excited to be there. I wore a simple black dress and brought a bottle of wine. Miles was out of town, so I came alone. I remember walking into the venue, decorated in candles and soft gold lighting, and thinking, wow, this is more than casual. Still, I shrugged it off. I found my seat. I smiled at relatives I hadn't seen in years. I waited. And then the doors opened, and Sienna walked in, wearing my dress. For one split second, I thought I was hallucinating. Then everything inside me fell apart. The betrayal wasn't a stab. It was a slow knife sliding in under my ribs, gentle and deliberate. And the worst part? I had handed her the blade. The moment she walked in wearing my dress, time didn't slow down, it froze. Everything around me, conversations, music, laughter, blurred into a deafening silence. All I could see was her, Sienna, standing under a golden chandelier, bathed in soft light, with everyone turning their heads to admire her. She looked radiant, confident, like she had planned this moment for months, and maybe she had. She stood tall, arm in arm with Noah, her long curls cascading over her shoulders, the silk of the dress shimmering with every step she took. My dress, my design, my story, worn like it was nothing more than a pretty costume. The same gown I had paid for in pieces over 3 years. The one I had designed with my own vision. The one that held pieces of my soul, my grandmother's brooch, the delicate stitching of the hem, the message sewn just beneath the bust. Worth the wait, except it hadn't been. She stole it before I could ever wear it down the aisle. People gasped. Whispers rippled across the room. Someone said, "Oh my God, where did she get that dress?" And someone else responded, "It's stunning. So unique." I was still standing, gripping the back of a chair so hard my fingers turned white. My breath came short, like all the air had been sucked from the room. She saw me, of course she saw me. Her eyes flicked to mine for just a beat, and then she smiled. Not a guilty smile, not even a nervous one. It was smug, controlled. Like she wanted me to feel this, like this was her victory lap. I waited for someone, anyone, to realize what was happening. For my mom to rush over in horror, for Noah to look confused, for someone to say, "Wait, isn't that Alara's dress?" But no one did. Everyone was too busy clapping, taking pictures, fawning over her like she was a princess at her coronation. And I was invisible again, just the sister in the corner, the one who did all the work and got none of the applause. The music started. Sienna and Noah began a slow walk toward the center of the room. She was basking in it, every eye on her, every phone angled toward her. And all I could think was, what kind of person does this to their own sister? And what kind of sister lets it happen? I stepped forward, shaky. I made it halfway toward the front before I stopped myself. Confronting her right then would have turned it into a scene. I could already hear what people would say. Ilara's overreacting. It's just a dress. It's not that deep, but it was. It was that deep. That dress was my symbol of independence, of all the years I put others first and finally chose to do something for myself. It was mine. And she had worn it to mark her own night, her own story. She hadn't even changed it. It wasn't inspired by mine, it was mine. The hem still had the subtle blue thread I'd chosen as my something blue. I could see the exact placement of Grandma's brooch, the one I'd been keeping safe in a velvet box in my drawer. How did she even get it? My breath caught. Had she gone into my apartment? My bedroom? Suddenly, the betrayal deepened. This wasn't just selfishness. This was invasive, strategic, cruel. She'd hugged me at that final fitting, told me how proud she was, asked about every detail with wide eyes and sweet smiles. And all the while she was planning to take it from me. I sat back down, trembling. I tried texting Miles, but he was still in flight. I wanted to scream, to cry, to vanish, but I forced myself to sit still. My mom finally approached me halfway through the dinner. She sat next to me like nothing was wrong. "Isn't she breathtaking?" she said. I looked at her, blinking slowly. "That's my dress, Mom." She paused, then gave a half smile. Maybe she just really loved it. I felt like I'd been slapped. There was no apology, no shock, no outrage. Just another excuse for Sienna's behavior. She must have told them something, lied about it, spun it into something forgivable. Because once again, they were all choosing her. I sat there, stunned, betrayed, and completely alone. But I didn't leave. Because deep in my chest, something cold and sharp and unbreakable had started to form. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not this time. The minute I got home that night, I ripped off my heels and sat on the edge of the bed, staring into nothing. My heart felt like it had been replaced with a stone. Something cold, heavy, unmovable. I didn't even cry at first. I just sat there, motionless, my mind spinning, trying to process what had just happened. Sienna had worn my wedding dress. She hadn't borrowed it. She hadn't asked. She had taken it, without permission, without remorse, and paraded it in front of everyone I knew. And somehow, I was the one left sitting there, alone, like a guest at my own heartbreak. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pick up my phone and call her, demand to know why she'd do something so cruel. But what stopped me wasn't fear. It was this deep, sinking knowledge she already knew what she did, and she didn't care. Worse, she wanted me to feel it. I curled up on the bed, still in my dress, and finally broke. The kind of crying that steals your breath, where your face is hot, and your body shakes and your thoughts are just static. I cried because I felt betrayed. I cried because no one had defended me. I cried because I knew deep down that this wasn't just about a dress. It was about everything. The years I gave up to help Sienna, the time, the energy, the belief that if I just kept loving her, she'd eventually love me back the same way. I didn't go to work the next day, or the next. I called in sick, though it felt more like broken than sick. I ignored texts. I didn't answer the door when my mom came by. I sat on my couch with a blanket wrapped around me like armor, replaying every moment from the dinner over and over. And every time, I ended up back at that moment. Sienna walking in, stealing something sacred to me, and smiling like it was nothing. I wanted someone, anyone, to acknowledge it, to tell me I wasn't crazy, that what she did was unforgivable. But the silence from my family was deafening. My mom texted the next day. "I know you're upset, but maybe this is one of those things you'll laugh about one day." I didn't even respond. 2 days later, my aunt sent me a photo from the dinner, Sienna twirling in the dress, with a champagne glass in hand. The caption said, "She looked like royalty last night. You must be so proud." Proud? I blocked her number. The isolation wasn't just emotional, it became physical. I stopped leaving the house. I canceled all my wedding plans, the florist, the caterer, the venue, even the honeymoon flights. I didn't have the energy to pretend like this could still happen the way I wanted. Miles called from Chicago where he was finishing a temporary project for work. I tried to sound normal. I didn't tell him everything, just enough to get through the call. Some family drama, I said, brushing it off. I didn't want him to worry, but I could hear the concern in his voice. Do you want me to come home early? No, I whispered. I just need space. What I really meant was, I need to fall apart alone. I barely ate. My fridge held half-finished meals and takeout I didn't touch. I left the wedding dress box, the empty wedding dress box, on the floor of my closet, like a coffin. I couldn't bear to open it. I didn't even know if Sienna had put the dress back, or if she still had it. The brooch, my grandmother's, was gone too. I felt like everything meaningful had been ripped out of my hands, and the world just kept turning. But somewhere in the quiet of those days, those empty, soul-hollow days, I started to feel something else rise up in me. It wasn't strength, not yet, but it was something close, something like anger, righteous, focused, sharp. Because when someone steals your voice, your choices, your moment, and the world tells you to get over it, what other choice do you have but to take it all back? Not with screaming, not with revenge, with clarity, with power, and with a microphone. About a week after the engagement dinner, just as I was starting to stitch myself back together, I got a call that changed everything. It was Noah. At first, I almost didn't answer. His name flashed across the screen, and my instinct was to let it ring out. After all, he was part of the mess, Sienna's fiancé, her partner in that glittering betrayal. I didn't know what he knew, or if he even cared, but something inside me whispered, "Pick up." So I did. His voice was low and hesitant, nothing like the confident smile he wore at the party. "Hey, Ilara, do you have a minute?" I hesitated. "I guess." There was a long pause, like he was choosing his next words carefully. "I owe you an apology. I didn't know that dress was yours. I swear I didn't." I said nothing. "I thought she designed it," he added. "She told me it was something she'd been working on for months, that it was a personal project from her fashion school days." That stopped me cold. Of course. Sienna had always been clever with half-truths. She probably spun some story about a long-lost design idea, something sentimental and vague. It made sense. But hearing it from Noah, hearing the guilt in his voice, hit differently. "I found the original sketches," he continued, "in her folder. They were signed. By you." Now I sat up straighter. "I confronted her," he said, more firmly now. "She brushed it off, said you didn't care, that you gave it to her. But I saw your face that night, Ilara. You cared." I swallowed hard. For the first time since that night, someone was actually acknowledging it. Not brushing it aside, not telling me to move on or let it go, just seeing me. Seeing what really happened. "She didn't even deny it properly," he said quietly. "Just changed the subject." That's when I knew something was off. My heart pounded. "Why are you telling me this?" Noah sighed. "Because I don't think I really know the person I'm about to marry, and you deserve better than what happened. I want to understand what's really going on." I didn't break down. Not then. I was too numb. But something in me softened, even just a little. For the first time since the engagement dinner, I didn't feel completely alone. Someone else saw it. Someone else got it. Over the next few days, we talked more. Carefully, cautiously. He asked questions and I answered them, though I kept my guard up. He asked about the brooch, about the embroidery, about the design choices. Every detail confirmed what I already knew. Sienna hadn't just stolen my dress. She had stolen my story. "She even had the tailor do last-minute adjustments without telling me," he said one night. "She told me not to look." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, that sounds about right." Noah confessed he'd been having doubts for a while, that she changed around him, that she could be cruel when no one was looking. that this whole engagement dinner had been her idea, something thrown together quickly and aggressively, like she needed to outshine someone. It didn't take much to guess who that someone was. "She talks about you all the time," Noah said one night, "but not like a sister, more like competition." That struck me hard. I'd never seen it that way. I thought I was the background character, the fixer, the boring, dependable one. But maybe deep down, Sienna had always been measuring herself against me. And when I finally had something she couldn't control, a happy relationship, a beautiful wedding, a moment of joy, she had to take it. Not because she needed it, but because she couldn't stand me having it first. And while Noah wasn't perfect, and I wasn't naive enough to put all my trust in him, he became a kind of unexpected lifeline. A voice reminding me I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. What happened was as wrong as it felt. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as invisible as they all made me feel. That small flicker of validation changed something in me. It didn't erase the pain, but it gave me a spark, a reason to get up, a reason to do something. Because if even he could see what she did, then maybe it was time the rest of them saw it too. And I knew just the way to show them. After my conversations with Noah, something in me shifted. The fog started to lift. Not all at once, and not cleanly, but enough for me to breathe again. Enough for me to stop crying every time I looked at the empty box where my wedding dress used to be. Enough to realize I had two options: stay curled up in grief over what had been stolen, or quietly, patiently, reclaim it all. I chose the second. But this time, I wouldn't announce anything. No group chats, no family updates. I wouldn't give Sienna or anyone else the satisfaction of seeing me struggle or the chance to sabotage me again. I went silent, but not still. The first thing I did was rebook the wedding. New venue, new vendors, new dressmaker. It was hard starting from scratch, but I approached it differently now. This wasn't about the picture-perfect Pinterest wedding anymore. It wasn't about pleasing anyone. It was about me and Miles, and doing things on our terms. Miles returned from Chicago 2 weeks later. I met him at the airport with a long, silent hug. Then we sat in the car while I told him everything. The dress, the engagement dinner, Sienna, my mom's reaction, Noah's confession. He didn't interrupt once. When I finally stopped, he looked at me with so much pain in his eyes, I couldn't hold my gaze. But then he reached over, took my hand, and said, "Let's start fresh. I don't care when or how. I just want to marry you." That's all I needed. We picked a small vineyard outside the city, quiet, beautiful, and private. No big announcements, just a few close friends. We gave everyone a different date and told them not to share it. I wasn't going to risk a single piece of this being tainted again. At the same time, I found a new designer, someone local, a woman named Tessa, who worked out of a tiny studio with mismatched chairs and fabric samples everywhere. When I told her what happened, her eyes welled up. "No one steals a wedding dress," she said, putting down her measuring tape. "They steal a piece of your identity. We're going to build something no one can ever take from you again." We started meeting twice a week. I designed a new gown, simpler, sleeker, but no less meaningful. It wasn't about revenge. It was about rediscovering the joy I'd once felt when I imagined walking toward the man I love. This time, every stitch felt like healing, like reclaiming something I hadn't realized I'd lost. Even before Sienna took the dress, my voice. In the background, Noah kept checking in. We didn't talk often, just enough to exchange quiet updates. He was still with Sienna for now, but the cracks were showing. He said he needed time to figure things out. I didn't push. I wasn't his therapist, but I was grateful for the honesty. Meanwhile, Sienna's Instagram was flooded with curated perfection. Filtered selfies, couples brunches, shots of her dress hanging in the window like it was her masterpiece. It would have gutted me a month ago. But now I could see it for what it was. A distraction. A mask. She could post 1,000 pictures, but the truth lived off camera. And the truth was this. While she posed for attention, I was building something real. I went back to work. I took long walks again. I cleaned my apartment top to bottom like I was exorcising her from the corners she'd crept into. I stopped apologizing for needing space. I started saying no. Not rudely, but firmly. It felt good. New. Even my mom noticed. One night she called and said, "You've been quiet lately." "I'm fine," I said. "You're different." I needed to be. There was silence. And then, "Are you still upset about the dress?" I paused, then smiled, softly. "No, not anymore." Because what Sienna took from me wasn't the real loss. What she failed to realize was that I had more than a dress. I had resilience. I had love. I had people who were finally starting to see me, not for what I'd done for others, but for who I actually was. And most of all, I had a plan. Because when Noah invited everyone to a formal dinner a few weeks later, including me, I knew exactly what was happening. And I was ready. As the weeks went by, Sienna's confidence only grew bolder. She kept posting photos from her engagement dinner, milking the admiration like it was her oxygen. Glamour shots of her in the dress, my dress, twirling under fairy lights, fake candid laughs with Noah, champagne flutes in her hand like she was royalty. And the comments? Overflowing. "You're glowing. Future fashion icon. That dress! Where can I get one?" She never corrected them. Not once. Meanwhile, my mom shared the photos on Facebook like she was showing off a prized possession. No caption about me, no acknowledgement of what had happened. Just praise for Sienna and how graceful she looked. I could have screamed, but I didn't. Because now I was operating on a different wavelength. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was watching, listening, learning just how blind they really were to what was about to come. And they had no clue. Mom called a few times, always with the same tone. Surface-level concern dipped in mild condescension. "Are you feeling better? Don't you think it's time to let it go? Sienna didn't mean to hurt you. Didn't mean to. She broke into my apartment, stole my dress, lied about it to her fiancé and family, and paraded it around like a trophy. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a choice. Multiple choices, actually. But Mom didn't want to hear that. She didn't want to admit that her favorite daughter, her golden girl, was capable of cruelty. And that's the thing. No one in my family ever wanted to believe Sienna could be wrong. Growing up, it was always me who had to be the bigger person, the one who stepped back, stayed quiet, cleaned up the mess. And I think that's why they kept treating me like a footnote, because they assumed I'd never speak up, that I'd always absorb the damage. Sienna counted on that. She kept texting me like nothing had happened. No apology, no confrontation, just casual nonsense. "Did you see that designer collab I tagged you in? Thinking about going blonde again, LOL, thoughts? Noah's planning a little dinner thing soon. Hope you can make it." She actually invited me. To the same dinner where she planned to show off her engagement to the man she deceived, using my gown, my design, and my silence. It was bold, arrogant, and honestly, a gift. Because the more I stayed quiet, the more she showed her hand. She thought I was weak, that I wouldn't fight back, that I'd be too embarrassed or too broken to expose her. She was wrong. While she and Mom gushed about wedding venues and Pinterest boards, I was working on something else entirely: the truth. Noah and I spoke a few more times, always discreetly. He was still with her, but distant, watching, taking notes. He said she was trying to rush the wedding plans, already suggesting dates and dress styles. It was happening fast, too fast, like she was trying to lock it down before things could unravel. "She knows I'm pulling away," he told me, "but she thinks a ring will fix it." It wouldn't. Not this time. Still, my family remained blissfully unaware. My aunts called to talk about Sienna's future wedding like it was some fairy tale in the making. My cousins reposted her Instagram reels with hashtags like #PowerCouple and #BridalGoals. No one asked about me. No one even noticed I hadn't been seen publicly in weeks. To them, I was just Alara, the quiet one, the stable one, The girl who doesn't make a scene. And that was their mistake. Because while they were distracted by her sparkle, I was preparing to turn the spotlight around. I knew the dinner was coming. Noah had confirmed it. He was planning something elegant, formal, another public event. Everyone would be there. Family, friends, co-workers, even old neighbors. And Sienna had no idea what Noah and I had quietly agreed to. He'd hand me the mic, and I would finally tell the story. Not out of revenge, not for attention, but for the truth, for myself. Because sometimes the greatest power isn't in shouting someone down, it's in calmly, publicly taking your place, while they watch everything they built on lies start to crumble. Noah kept his word. The invitations went out exactly 2 weeks after we last spoke. Elegant gold-trimmed cards with the heading, "A celebration of love and new beginnings. Join us for a formal evening." No mention of an engagement, no hint of drama, just vague enough to raise curiosity, polished enough to attract everyone Sienna wanted to impress. Family, friends, distant cousins, his co-workers, her fashion school connections, even our mother. Everyone was invited, including me, and I said yes. It took everything in me to accept that invitation calmly. I remember standing in my kitchen, rereading the message Noah had sent, confirming the time and location. A private dining hall in a boutique hotel. Classy, upscale, intimate. Just over 50 guests. Sienna thought it would be her moment. Another night to bask in admiration. She didn't suspect a thing. She believed I was over it. Done. Still hiding in silence. That's what made it perfect. The week leading up to the event, I stayed quiet, kept my phone off more than on. I posted nothing online, not a hint of what I was planning, because this wasn't just a dinner, it was the final act. The place where all the threads would converge. My pain, her betrayal, Noah's doubts, all of it, right there under warm lighting and champagne toasts. I picked out my dress with care. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic. Just a rich sapphire gown with clean lines, elegant and grounded. It was everything Sienna's theatrics weren't. Quiet confidence, depth, grace. And this time, I wasn't dressing to prove anything. I was dressing to own the room. Miles knew everything now, every detail, every piece of hurt I'd kept buried. He stood by me without hesitation. When I asked him to come to the dinner, not as a guest, but as my fiancé, he said yes before I finished the sentence. "We'll do this your way," he told me, taking my hand. "I'll be wherever you need me." That gave me strength. The night of the dinner arrived faster than I expected. As I got dressed, my hands were steady. My mind was clear. I looked in the mirror and didn't see the shattered version of myself anymore. I saw someone sharper, stronger, someone who had been through the storm and walked out without apologizing for surviving it. We arrived just before 7 p.m. The room was beautiful. Strings of soft golden lights hung from the ceiling, and jazz music played gently in the background. Tables were set with name cards and white roses. Everything about it screamed picture perfect. But I wasn't looking at the decor. I was watching Sienna. She floated around the room, greeting people like she was royalty at a gala. Perfect makeup, perfect smile. A designer cocktail dress that barely hid how tightly she was holding everything together. She was glowing, but not from joy, from control. Carefully managed, obsessively curated control. And when she saw me, really saw me, her smile faltered for just a second, just long enough for me to know that she wasn't as sure of herself as she pretended to be. I gave her a small nod, then turned away. No confrontation, no drama. That would come later, on my terms. Dinner was served, wine poured, people laughed, told stories, clinked glasses. It was everything she wanted. For a little while, it almost felt normal. And then Noah stood up. He tapped his glass gently with a fork. The room slowly quieted. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he said. "This has been a strange and beautiful journey, and I think tonight is the right time to share something important." Sienna's face tensed. He smiled gently. "But I think someone else deserves the microphone first." Then he turned and handed it to me. The silence in the room was instant. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. I stood slowly, my palms calm and dry. My voice was steady, my back straight. Sienna's eyes locked on mine. Her expression shifted. First confusion, then panic. And I knew this was it. Not a moment of revenge, a moment of clarity. A moment where every lie she told would be undone, not with rage, but with truth. And when I opened my mouth to speak, the entire room leaned in. The weight of 50 pairs of eyes pressing in on me should have made my legs shake. It didn't. As I stepped forward, mic in hand, I could hear every breath in the room. The clink of silverware had stopped. The jazz music faded to background noise. Even the hum of conversation died. Every ounce of sound was replaced with a hush, so heavy, it felt sacred. I turned to face the room fully, standing just to the side of Noah, and locked eyes with my sister. Sienna's face was a mask. She was trying to smile, trying to play it cool, but her eyes, they were panicked, sharp, searching, calculating. She had no idea what I was about to say, and that terrified her. Good. I let the silence stretch, just long enough to command the room. Then I took a breath. I know most of you came here tonight to celebrate love, I began, my voice clear and unwavering. And I promise we will. I smiled, and a few guests exchanged confused looks. But first, I need to tell you a story. Sienna took a small step forward, like she was about to interrupt. Noah subtly lifted a hand in her direction. Stay back. She froze, jaw tight. I continued. Some of you know me. Some of you might not. I'm Alara James, Sienna's older sister. And for most of my life, I've been proud to be that. I helped raise her. I supported her. I believed in her, even when she didn't always deserve it. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Sienna's mother-in-law-to-be leaned forward, clearly intrigued. 6 months ago, I got engaged to the love of my life, a quiet man, kind and loyal, who stood by me through everything. We planned a small wedding, nothing flashy, just us, a dress I saved for 3 years to design, and a promise we couldn't wait to make. I paused and looked directly at Sienna. She looked like she was holding her breath. Then, a few weeks before the wedding, something unexpected happened. That dress, the one I dreamed of, planned, and paid for, disappeared. And at what was supposed to be someone else's engagement dinner, my sister walked into the room wearing it. A murmur swept through the room. Someone gasped audibly. She didn't ask. She didn't explain. She wore it like it belonged to her. The lace I hand-selected, the embroidery I designed, even my grandmother's brooch, tucked just beneath her collarbone. Sienna stepped forward. Alara, don't... No, I said calmly, still holding the mic. You had your turn. Now it's mine. She froze. I turned back to the room. She told people it was her design. She let strangers think she created it, that it was her moment. And when I told my family, they asked me to be quiet, to let it go. Now, more guests looked stunned. Noah's boss, sitting near the front, leaned toward his wife and whispered something. I was supposed to get married last month, I continued. But instead of walking down the aisle, I walked into silence. Because I was afraid. Afraid no one would believe me. That speaking up would make me the villain. Then I smiled. But I'm not afraid anymore. I turned slightly, gesturing toward the entrance. The double doors opened, and Miles walked in. Dressed in a deep navy suit, crisp and poised, he walked toward me with slow, steady steps, his presence radiating calm. And now, I said, I'd like to introduce the groom. Miles took my hand as he reached the front. The silence turned into stunned whispers, then murmurs, then growing waves of conversation. Sienna's face, blank, colorless. I wasn't done. I didn't come here to ruin anyone's night, I said. I came here to reclaim mine, because when someone steals something sacred from you, your voice, your joy, your moment, you have every right to take it back. I looked around the room, one last time. This man is the love of my life. And our wedding is back on. In fact, it's already planned. You're all invited, 2 weeks from now, in Austin. And then, with Miles at my side, I handed the mic back to Noah and walked off the stage, still standing tall, still holding my peace, and finally being seen. The moment I stepped away from the mic and rejoined Miles, I could feel it. The shift in the air. It was like the entire room had collectively exhaled after holding its breath. And then, the questions started. Guests turned to each other in hushed tones. I caught fragments. Wait, she stole her sister's wedding dress? Did you know about this? Oh my God, how could she? But the loudest silence came from Sienna. She was frozen where she stood, eyes darting from Noah to me to the crowd, her mouth slightly parted, like she couldn't decide whether to scream or fake a faint. Her body was stiff. No more twirls, no more spotlight smiles, just a still, shaky figure, exposed under the weight of her own lies. She stepped forward like she wanted to say something, maybe to defend herself, maybe to deny it. But Noah turned to her, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something fierce behind his calm eyes. You lied to me, he said, loudly enough for the front tables to hear. Sienna flinched. You said that dress was your design. You told me you worked on it for months. You let me believe you were the artist behind it. Her voice cracked as she tried to regain control. I didn't lie, Noah. I just didn't think Alara was going to use it. The room murmured again. I felt my fists clench at my sides. She wasn't going to use it? Noah repeated. That was her wedding dress. How do you even justify that? Sienna looked around, searching for support. Her gaze landed on our mother, who had been sitting 3 tables down. Mom looked pale. She hadn't moved since I started speaking, and she wasn't rushing to Sienna's side now. Sienna, Noah said, taking a small step back. I trusted you. I proposed to you, and you couldn't even respect your own sister's most sacred day. What would you do to me if I had something you wanted? His words landed like a slap. You could feel the tension snap in the room. I made a mistake, she said, her voice small. You don't have to humiliate me. But it wasn't humiliation. It was consequence. The kind she had spent her whole life outrunning. This wasn't one of her staged Instagram moments. This was real, raw, unfiltered, and she had no control. Noah's mother stood and walked over to him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Her face was unreadable, but the way she angled herself away from Sienna told the story. My mom finally stood up, awkwardly adjusting her blouse, as if straightening the fabric could smooth over the cracks that had just split open between us all. Elara, she called softly, maybe we can talk in private. I looked at her, really looked. For the first time in my life, I didn't see the woman who always asked me to stay quiet, to keep the peace, to be the bigger person. I saw someone who had enabled this for years, someone who gave Sienna the rope and watched me hang for it. Now's not the time, Mom, I said, my voice low. You had a chance to listen before. You didn't. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue. But then, she sat back down. Sienna's face crumpled. She turned back to Noah. Please, let's just go somewhere. We can talk about this. Fix it. Noah shook his head. You don't fix things by stealing them. You fix them by being honest. And I don't know who you are anymore. Then, quietly, firmly, he took off his engagement ring, hers, and placed it gently on the table between them. I can't marry someone who lies like it's easy. It was the final nail. The guests didn't clap. There were no cheers. Just a heavy silence, thick with understanding, followed by the quiet shuffle of people standing, grabbing coats, whispering as they exited. The fairy tale was over. Sienna was left standing in the wreckage of her own deception, mascara smudged, hands trembling, utterly exposed. And for once, she had no words. The dinner was over. People left in waves, some with polite nods, others in stunned silence. A few guests came up to me on their way out. One woman gripped my hand and whispered, "That was brave." Another said, "We had no idea. Good for you." I smiled and thanked them, but inside, I wasn't thinking about victory. Not in the way people usually mean it, because this wasn't a win in the traditional sense. It was something deeper. It was peace. Sienna had spent her life performing, creating a flawless version of herself and forcing the rest of us to orbit around it. I'd spent my life making space for her, adjusting myself, shrinking my feelings to keep things comfortable. And for the longest time, I thought that was love. I thought being the quiet one, the steady one, the fixer, meant I was doing the right thing. But now, standing in the aftermath of the chaos she created, I realized something that nearly brought me to tears. I didn't need her to admit what she did. I didn't need her to apologize. I didn't even need her to hurt the way I had hurt. All I ever needed was to stop carrying what wasn't mine. I wasn't responsible for her insecurity, or her selfishness, or the way my own family failed to defend me. I had spent years blaming myself, believing if I was just more patient, more supportive, more perfect, then maybe I'd be enough to earn respect. But the truth is, when people decide to overlook you, you can exhaust your soul trying to make them see you, and it still won't be enough until you decide it is. Miles came over, sliding his arm gently around my waist. I leaned into him, not for support, but because I finally felt steady enough to share the weight. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't need to. He knew. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. And I believed him. That was new. A few minutes later, Noah approached me. His tie was loosened, his eyes heavy but clear. "I meant what I said back there," he told me. "You didn't just help me dodge a disaster, you reminded me how important it is to pay attention to what love isn't." I nodded. "I hope you find someone who tells the truth the first time." He smiled, a little broken but grateful. "You too." As he walked away, I felt no anger toward him, no guilt, no discomfort, just a clean break in the story, like a chapter turning quietly. Sienna never said another word that night. She didn't follow me out. She didn't call. And honestly, I was relieved, because for the first time in our lives, there was nothing left for me to fix. That night, after Miles and I got home, I poured a glass of wine and stepped out onto the small balcony off our apartment. The sky was dark and full of stars, the kind of stillness you only get after a storm. I thought about that empty dress box that had sat in my closet for weeks, the one I had avoided looking at. It was gone now, donated to a women's shelter earlier that week. I didn't need the dress anymore. I didn't need anything that tethered me to that pain. Instead, I had a new dress, a new venue, a new date marked on the calendar. But more importantly, I had myself back, and she was stronger than I remembered. When you go through betrayal like that, especially from someone who's supposed to love you, it strips you bare. But sometimes, being stripped down is what finally lets you see what's real. And what was real was this. I had nothing to prove to anyone. Not my family, not the internet, not even Sienna. The only person I needed to stand tall for was me. That was the victory. Not the moment she was humiliated, not the whispers in the crowd, not the ring Noah placed on the table. The victory was in knowing I didn't need to destroy anyone to feel whole. I just needed to stop disappearing for people who were never looking. 1 week after the dinner, I got a text from my mother. "Sienna wants to talk. Can she come over?" I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me expected it. Another part hoped it wouldn't come. Not because I feared confrontation, but because I wasn't sure she deserved any more of my energy. Still, I said yes. Not for her, for me. When Sienna arrived, she didn't look like the woman who had twirled through candlelight in my stolen dress. Her hair was in a messy bun, no makeup, oversized sweatshirt hanging off one shoulder. It wasn't the usual curated version of her that the world was used to seeing. She looked small, awkward, uncertain, like a child walking into the principal's office. I didn't say anything at first. I let her speak. "I don't even know where to start," she muttered, taking a cautious step into my apartment. I crossed my arms. "Try the truth." She let out a breath like she'd been holding it for days. "Okay, you're right. About everything." I didn't reply. "I took your dress. I went into your apartment. I knew what I was doing." Again, I said nothing. "I didn't expect it to blow up like this," she added quietly. I finally spoke. "You didn't expect to get caught." Her eyes flicked to mine. She winced. "I guess not." She sat on the edge of the couch, picking at the seam of her sleeve. "I've been thinking a lot since that night. About what I did. About who I've become." I waited, listening. "I don't know why I did it," she whispered. "I think maybe part of me was jealous." That caught me off guard. "Of what?" I asked. "You've always had everything." She shook her head slowly. "Not really. I had the attention, the compliments, but you had the substance. People trust you. They lean on you. You're stable. You're good." I blinked. For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "So you stole my wedding dress because you admire me?" She flinched. "I know it doesn't make sense. I just wanted something that felt real. And you were finally getting everything I told myself I didn't want, but secretly did. A real relationship, a man who loved you, a wedding that meant something." I felt a strange mix of anger and pity bubbling in my chest. "I would have given you anything if you'd just asked," I said softly. "I've always shared everything with you. My time, my money, my home, but not this. This was mine, and you didn't care." Tears welled in her eyes. "I was selfish. I was cruel. I thought I could just take it, and it wouldn't matter. I thought you'd forgive me like you always do." There it was. The truth behind the truth. She had always counted on me to be the one who let it slide, who swallowed the pain, who made peace, even when I was the one bleeding. "I'm not that girl anymore," I told her. She nodded, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I can see that." We sat in silence for a while. The kind that feels heavy but honest. She finally stood. "I don't expect you to forgive me, I just needed to say it out loud. To your face. I'm sorry, Alara." I looked at her, really looked at her. And I believed her. Maybe not completely, maybe not forever, but in that moment, her apology felt real. "I accept your apology," I said, "but I don't know if we'll ever be what we were." "That's fair." "I need time. And space." She nodded again. "If you ever need me, even just to sit and listen, I'll be here." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet, not with a sense of triumph, but with relief. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone to erase what they did. It's a gift you give yourself to stop carrying the weight of it. I wasn't healing for her. I was healing for me. And that was the difference. 2 weeks later, I walked down the aisle. Not in the dress that was stolen, but in the one I had rebuilt. It was different than the first, but somehow more me. It was simple, with soft satin folds, a neckline that dipped just enough to feel bold, and a train that whispered instead of screamed. The only thing I kept from the original design was a new version of the embroidery hidden inside the bodice. But instead of "worth the wait," it now read, "finally seen." The vineyard we chose was peaceful. Golden lights spilled through rows of vines. The air smelled of wildflowers and earth. We didn't invite many people, just the ones who had shown up for the real version of us. Friends who'd called, co-workers who'd sent quiet messages of support. The people who believed me, not because it was convenient, but because they knew me. My mother was there. She didn't say much, but when she hugged me, it was different. Not proud or performative, just quiet. And maybe, finally, remorseful. She never brought Sienna that day, and I didn't ask her to. That wound hadn't fully healed, but I'd stopped needing it to be neat. Some scars you don't cover, you carry them. And that's okay. As I stood at the end of the aisle, looking at Miles, my calm in the chaos, my home in human form, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Safe, seen, whole. He smiled like I was the only thing in the world worth waiting for. And in that moment, I believed I was. The ceremony was simple, no big theatrics, no dramatic music cues, just vows that we wrote ourselves, exchanged in voices full of warmth and years of shared struggle. When he slid the ring onto my finger, I didn't cry. I didn't need to. I was too full of certainty for tears. We were married under the open sky, surrounded by love, but more importantly, on our terms. And nothing could ruin that. After the ceremony, I wandered away for a moment, barefoot in the grass, holding a glass of sparkling cider in one hand. I looked out over the hills and thought about the version of myself who had once stood alone at that engagement dinner, trembling, heartbroken, humiliated. She had no idea that this day would still happen. Better, brighter, stronger. She thought her story had ended that night in a room full of whispers, but it hadn't. It had started. That night had cracked something open. Not just between me and Sienna, but inside of me. A lifetime of playing small, of over-apologizing, of quietly absorbing the impact of everyone else's selfishness. It ended when I picked up that microphone. And the woman who walked away from that podium, she wasn't a victim. She was a woman who had outgrown silence. I don't tell this story because I want pity. I tell it because I know there's someone listening who's been made to feel invisible, who's been told to keep the peace, who's been silenced, sidelined, or made to feel small to make someone else feel big. This is for you. You don't need to burn down the world to reclaim your power. Sometimes you just need to stand still and be heard. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away with grace, knowing you didn't stoop to their level, because you didn't need to. You already rose. So yes, Sienna wore my dress. She took something from me. But in the end, it led me here, to a day that wasn't about proving anything or winning anything back. It was about walking in my own truth. And finally, being free.